On today's show, I'm going to give you a full breakdown of the free agent market for starting pitchers.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the number one daily podcast of the New York Mets. Want to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today. Now, it was months ago, actually, where I wrote an article for justbaseball.com where I gave readers a full breakdown of the starting pitching market in free agency, looking at the top of the rotation potential arms, because there's not a lot of clear cut, oh, this guy was an ace in 2025 and now he's a free agent. But I have a list of guys that could be aces again in 2026, some middle of the rotation arms, and then back of the rotation arms. So I will leave the link for that article in the episode descriptions today. So if you wanted to read about all the different starting pitchers on the market, and particularly just look at the stats that they had, their ages going into free agency, all the good stuff, you can do so. And we'll go through it throughout the show today. To me, when I look at where the Mets are at and what they have to do this offseason, I don't think that the starting rotation is in as much of a dire strait as it has been made out to be. I think this team needs an ace. And I almost think that's all they need to add this offseason. Because I look at Nolan McLean and I say, he's your number two. It's a perfect spot for him in the rotation. I think Clay Holmes is ready to be a number three. I think he's going to be even better next season. The fact that he was getting stronger as the year wore on was so impressive. He was able to make every single start. He got up to 165 and 2/3 innings pitch, a 3.53 ERA. That's not a bad three. David Peterson wore down at the end of the season, but he was an all-star in the first half. That's another guy that I think you can expect to be in the middle of your rotation and be fine. And then you have the two wild cards of Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea. So I look at that grouping of pitchers, and I don't think that you have to go out and add three starting pitchers this offseason. I really don't. Especially when you still have Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong waiting in the wings. And we'll see if those guys remain with the Mets throughout this offseason or if one of them is used in their trade to get that ace on the trade market that we've been talking about on the show for the past couple weeks. But regardless, the Mets have enough depth where I don't think that this is a situation where they have to trade for an ace, sign an ace, and then sign a middle of the rotation arm. I think they need one ace. And you know what? If you're really trying to overhaul things, maybe you get two frontline pitchers, but more likely I think it's trade for an ace and maybe sign a flyer type, which we'll talk about in the final segment, similar to the Griffin Canning signing of last year. But let's start it off with the different potential aces the Mets could land in free agency, guys that have pitched at an ace level at some point in their careers. And the one guy that also pitched at, I would say, an ace level in 2025 is Framber Valdez. Valdez is going to be 32 years old. In this past season, he pitched to a 3.66 ERA and 192 innings pitched. There was a run there where Framber Valdez was just unbeatable. I mean, there was a stretch. Let me see if I can pull up exactly how many games in a row the Astros won with Framber on the mound, because he just had this run in the middle of the season that was just untouchable. It started on May 7th. I'm going to count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The Astros won 13 consecutive starts by Framber Valdez. Now, he started off the year, struggled a little bit, goes on that run, and he's pitching 7, 8, 7, 6, 9, 7, like all of these starts where he's going deep into games. Framber Valdez can be a workhorse for you. Framber Valdez has been on good teams that have won it all as the frontline starting pitcher, as the ace. You look at what he has done leading into free agency. If you go back to 2021, he made 22 starts, 134 and 2/3 innings pitched, a 3.14 ERA. 2022, he was an all-star, pitched to a 2.82 ERA, got over 200 innings. 2023, an all-star again, 3.45 ERA and 31 starts, 198 innings pitched. Then you had 2024, a 2.91 ERA and 28 starts, 176 and a third innings pitched. And then this past season, again, a 3.66 ERA and 192 innings. Framber is the best starting pitcher on this market based on the results that he has had. With that said, would I want to commit multiple years to Framber Valdez for a guy that I'm just wondering what it's going to be like in the clubhouse? For those of you who missed it during the season, there was this instance where Framber got into it with his catcher. He shook him off a bunch of times, throws the pitch that he wants, gives up a grand slam. Next batter that he faces, he crosses him up and drills him in the chest protector. Now they said after the game, oh, it was nothing. Yeah, it was just a cross up. We have great communication. It was their third string catcher who was not going to make a stink about what Framber did. But it was a bad look. And I do wonder how that's going to impact his market. I think it might actually hurt him a little bit. I don't know if I love Framber as the guy the Mets should sign. And if you're just looking at who do you want to commit a long-term deal to, if you only are going to sign over the next 2 years, one guy to a 5+ year deal, who is that guy? Because to me, I think you can make a real case on waiting it out and signing Tarik Skubal next offseason. Whether that means trading for Freddy Peralta, riding out his final year, and then waiting till you get to free agency then and you have Freddy Peralta. You could always re-sign, but you have your eye on Skubal. Whether that means you trade for Sandy Alcantara or Joe Ryan, guys that have 2 years of control, but still leave that long-term contract, out there to potentially sign Skubal, or if you just sign somebody right now. And if you're going to sign somebody right now, I think the two guys that stand out the most are both Boris clients, but guys that are coming off healthy seasons that they did not really pitch up to their standards, but in the past, they've been aces. It's Dylan Cease and Zack Gallen. Both these guys are going to be 30 next year. Both of these guys have great stuff. Dylan Cease, in particular, is the guy that I think is going to do the best in this free agent market because I think there is not a pitching coach on the planet that does not say, I can fix that guy. I can make that guy the best pitcher in baseball again, like he was. I don't know if he was the best pitcher in baseball, but one of the best pitchers in baseball a couple years ago when he narrowly lost the Cy Young to Justin Verlander. That was back in 2022 when he pitched to a 2.20 ERA and 32 starts, struck out 227 and 184 innings pitched. Dylan Cease has 5 seasons in a row with over 200 strikeouts, and in all 5 seasons, he struck out at least 214. He struck out as many as that 227. Year before, they struck out 226. He is a strikeout artist. He is a workhorse. He makes every single start. He's done that now 5 years in a row of making every start. Actually, 6 if you wanted to count the 2020 season when he was a rookie. So I think Dylan Cease is the guy that most teams are looking at and saying, if I'm going to give a long-term deal to one of them, it's Cease. Zack Gallen's interesting because he had a brutal first half of the season, came on strong in the second half. He has led a team to the World Series, although I don't think he was the best during that World Series run in 2023 in the playoffs. He was just okay, but he definitely has that ace potential to get back to that form. But coming off a down year, what does he get on the market? And so I think that's the interesting thing. I looking at the absolute top of this free agent market. It's those 3 arms, and I don't think any of them is a sure thing. Not that you ever find a sure thing in free agency, but last year, Blake Snell, it was pretty convincing that he was going to be an ace whenever he's on the mound. Max Fried had been a very good frontline starter for the Braves, and you had a level of confidence that he was going to be able to produce, at least at the beginning of his next contract. Corbin Burns, same deal. He just ended up needing Tommy John. So that's the top of this market. Now, I think there's a couple other guys that could be aces. Again, this is potential frontline starting pitchers. And Shane Bieber has been a frontline pitcher throughout his entire career. He has been one of the best right-handed pitchers in baseball. He won a Cy Young. Now, he's coming off TJ, Made 7 starts down the stretch for the Blue Jays, and now he's in the World Series. And he has looked pretty good in the playoffs. Not quite looking like his absolute best self, but he's been solid enough. He had a 3.57 ERA in those 7 starts. Got the fresh elbow. I love the idea of signing Shane Bieber, especially if it's a pillow contract for him. I think he's going to be able to demand a 1+1. 1-year deal with a player option for the second year. He'll go out on that contract, pitch to the best of his abilities. If everything works out, hits the market again, gets his long-term deal next season. That's how I think it's going to work for Bieber, and I would be all in on taking that bet. I really would. But you never know. He could opt out of his player option, which is a $16 million player option, $4 million buyout. So he opts out, he collects $4 million. He's going to take that because he's going to beat $12 million on the market. Then the Blue Jays have to decide, maybe they extend him a qualifying offer. Because I don't think it's crazy to think that Shane Bieber could get a 1-year deal at the qualifying offer, which is $22 million and change. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibilities at all. Walker Buehler essentially got that in the market last year when he did not get extended the qualifying offer. He signed for the qualifying offer amount with the Red Sox. So if you're the Blue Jays, maybe you do get in the qualifying offer. And if you're Bieber, instead of going to the market attached to the QO, maybe you decide to just pitch on it and you're not a free agent. I think the same thing could happen with Brandon Woodruff. Woodruff pitched to a 3.2 ERA in 12 starts this past season when he was on the mound. He struggled to stay healthy. I think there was, what were the injuries for Brandon Woodruff? I think it was just a couple of, so he had a right lat strain, although that was what resulted in his surgery. So he had a shoulder surgery that kept him out for the 2024 season. He had an ankle injury at the end of the year, and he got out of the gates with another nagging injury that kept him from starting at the beginning of the season. But in the middle there was 12 really good starts, and then an ankle injury kept him out of the postseason for the Brewers. Woodruff will be 33 next season. So Brandon Woodruff, I think you're looking at another guy who might sign a 1-year prove-it deal. He has a mutual option for $20 million, $10 million buyout. So if the Brewers don't pick up their end of that mutual option, they owe him $10 million. They'll opt in. He'll likely opt out, or he could opt out. He could just pitch on the $20 million deal. I think he opts out to be a free agent. And then the Brewers might tag him with the QO, and then he might accept that. Because just like Bieber, does he want to hit the market with the qualifying offer attached? The last guy to mention is Michael King. I'm going to actually save Michael King for the next segment just because we've got a little bit long on this one. And we'll talk about Michael King along with Ranger Suarez and a couple of other guys who I think are probably more middle of the rotation arms, but some of them have some real upside. So we're going to go through those arms in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets. That's right. You pick a bet, you put down $5. If it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether that's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes watching football even more exciting. You got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel is going to make the game day experience so much better. It's quick, it's easy. It's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rugiet Go Long. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. This isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for your confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctors' trusted medications in one dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. And the process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. And if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to Rugiet.com. That's RUGIET.com to use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Make sure to use our code so they know that we sent you. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. We're getting closer and closer. Really do appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Now, Michael King to me is another guy that I would say is a frontline arm when he's healthy. This past season, he only made 15 starts, pitched to a 3.44 ERA in those 15 starts across 73 and a third innings pitched, but was not quite the guy that we saw the year prior in San Diego, pitched to a 2.95 ERA and 173 and two-third innings pitched. Now, there is not a long track record of Michael King as a starting pitcher. He has the past 2 years in San Diego and the end of the 2023 season with the Yankees. Prior to that, he was great pitching out of the bullpen. So this very much could be Clay Holmes 2.0 for the New York Mets, except for this guy has already gone through that transition to being a starting pitcher. The question now is, after a season where he only made half of his starts, can he get back to making 30 starts for you? But I think Michael King is a high upside arm. What I'm very curious about is what type of a contract does he settle on? Does he look for a 1-year deal to reestablish his market? Is he going to try to sign a 4-year deal at a decent enough number with an opt-out to test the market again? I think that's probably the best case scenario for him. I don't think that he's going to get maybe the 5, 6, 7-year deal they would have hoped for if he had just repeated his 2024 performance in 2025. But the fact is, he was still very effective when on the mound. He has great stuff. I would be in on Michael King, but not necessarily on the long-term deal. I think there's a couple of different arms that, again, maybe you want to overpay for a season to bring in a Michael King, a Shane Bieber, or a Brandon Woodruff and keep your financial flexibility long-term to go headfirst into the Skubal market when he hits free agency. That might be the way to play this, but King is a very good arm to look at. Ranger Suarez, poaching a guy that's been in your division for some time, would be an interesting choice this free agency. Suarez will be 30 years old in 2026. He deserves to be mentioned in the same tier as some of the guys we've been talking about because this past season hit a 3.20 ERA in 26 starts. We have seen him pitch at a very high level throughout his career, a career 3.38 ERA. And you look and he has been relatively healthy throughout a majority of his career. 2022, he pitched 155 and a third innings. That was a career high at a 3.65 ERA. 2023, pitched to a 4.18 ERA and 125 innings. 2024, he was an all-star at one point. He looked like a Cy Young candidate in that first half of the season in 24. Pitched to a 3.46 ERA overall in 27 starts on 150 and two-third innings pitched. He's a little bit inconsistent, a little bit streaky, but the results have been there. For me, I think Ranger has proven himself to be able to ask for and receive a 4 or 5 year deal. And I just don't think Ranger Suarez is the guy that I necessarily want to be tied to long-term. I don't know if I want to be tied to any of these guys long-term in this market. I think the one guy that I make that exception on is Dylan Cease, because I think Dylan Cease has great stuff. And it's just a matter of helping him be consistent and helping him avoid some of those blow-up starts. But I think there's ace potential in Cease. I don't know if I really see that in much of these other guys in the market. Like I said, for a given season, sure, but year over year over year, a guy can go to the bank with. I don't know if that exists in this market. I really don't. So that's where I'm sort of hesitant on all these guys. And this is why we've been talking about trading for a starting pitcher for so long, because I think some of the better upside options exist on that market, especially because in the trade market, you're talking about guys that are already under contract. They don't have to worry about trying to pay long-term. For some of these other guys, if a bidding war ensues for a Zack Gallen or a Ranger Suarez, you are going to have to go to a certain amount of years that could really hurt you if one of these guys goes sideways and now you're stuck with someone that's on your books for a long time that it's not going to pitch to the level that you expected. So again, little torn on a guy like Suarez. I don't necessarily view him as the most likely candidate to sign with the Mets. Now, a couple other names. Lucas Giolito had a good season. He's 31 or will be 31 next season, made 26 starts, 145 innings, pitched to a 3.41, but he got hurt at the end of the season. I think there's a chance that he just opts into his contract with the Red Sox. Merrill Kelly was awesome. 32 starts, 3.52 ERA, and 184 innings pitched. This is the guy the Mets should have traded for at the deadline. He's going to be 37, though, in 2026. Does he get a 3-year deal? I mean, that's what I think. If I was an agent, I'd be looking for, because he's been one of the more consistent starting pitchers in Major League Baseball. Don't know if he gets it at that age. Maybe it's a 2-year deal. And I would not be opposed to seeing the Mets get Merrill Kelly, because he has just been a very consistent arm. But again, definitely an older pitcher that once you get north of 35, that drop-off can come at any time, and it could be drastic. Chris Bassett's going to be 37 as well, coming off a season where he made that right, 36 starts. Did we have a misprint in our article? That can't be right. Yeah, I got to fix that. 32 starts. 32 games, 31. Yeah, we got to make a note for that for myself here. Jeez. It's like 36 starts. What's going on here? But Bassett pitched to a 3.96 ERA for the Blue Jays, 170 in the third innings pitched. We know what he did in a Mets uniform. He's just a good pitcher. He's the guy that's going to make his starts and he's going to make your team better. I would not mind a reunion with Chris Bassett, but that would be to bolster the middle of your rotation. The Mets more need a frontline arm, so I don't know if he's necessarily the guy to get. Jose Quintana, another former Met who is going to be 37 next year. He as well also pitched to a 3.96 ERA in 24 starts. That's over 131 in 2/3 innings pitched. Not a bad option, but again, I don't know if he addresses the part of the rotation that the Mets need to be focused on. Zack Gallen has been a near frontline arm in the past, coming off a dreadful season where he dealt with inconsistencies on the mound and injury. 14 starts, 5.93 ERA. He is a flyer you could take on trying to bet on a guy being better, which leads us to our final segment here. I got a couple other arms that fit that same bucket, guys that are flyers that you might look to make in free agency. Very similar to what the Mets did last year with Griffin Canning. Is there a diamond in the rough that you can pick up for a lower 1-year contract that you can turn into a pitcher that really helps your rotation with the depth and maybe ends up being a guy like Canning who can start off the season and really carry you through some of those early months and maybe be the bridge to a Jonah Tong or somebody else that might need a little more seasoning in the minor leagues. So we're going to go through a couple of those flyers and then an overall look at this market in just a minute. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back and now basketball back as well, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you could turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. And also, it's cool because you can play across different sports. So tonight with Thursday Night Football, but also NBA games being played, you can make some NBA picks. You can make some football picks. You can match them together in the same lineup. And the best part, even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Let's go LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. And then in season, you get a line graphic sent to your phone each day so you know the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. A couple guys that you can take a flyer on in this free agent market to just build out your overall depth. Andrew Heaney had a bad season last year, 5.52 ERA, but the year prior he had a 4.28 ERA in 160 innings. The year before that, a 4.15 ERA, 147 in a third innings. Not a great pitcher, but a guy that's been able to get the job done and give teams quality innings in the past. Would not completely mind seeing him on a 1-year deal that's got a low dollar amount. Not my favorite guy in this section, though. Dustin May might be. He's 28 years old. He has great stuff. Guy that's really struggled to get on the mound. He had a couple of elbow procedures that were done. One in, I want to say 2021, another in 2023. has never really had a completely healthy season, although this year was his closest one to that. He did get over 130 innings pitched and had a 4.96 ERA split between the Dodgers and the Red Sox. Dustin May had this very strange injury where he had his esophagus torn. He was eating a salad or something. I thought it was a salmon. Originally, I remember it being a salmon that was not properly deboned, but then I was reading about it today, and they said it was like a wedge of lettuce that got lodged in his throat. Sounds awful, and that kept him off the mound in 2024. So it was just, for him, an incredible moment to even pitch this past season. But again, he's just 28 years old, and he has really good stuff. This is the guy that I can see David Stearns, getting in a room saying, we can help you, and getting him to sign like they did with Griffin Canning. And a pitcher like that could really outperform the contract you give him. So Dustin May, to me, headlines the list of flyers the Mets can take. Walker Buehler is another one, but I think Buehler is going to want a clear road or clear runway to start. And I don't know if the Mets can afford him that. But Walker Buehler, with the Phillies down the stretch, across 3 appearances, pitched to a 0.66 ERA. With the Red Sox at the start of the season, a 5.45 ERA and 112 and a third innings pitch. He has struggled to figure out who he is post Tommy John. I believe that's either his second or third TJ that he's had throughout his baseball life. So he has gone through the ringer a little bit. But when he was right, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. And he was huge for the Dodgers last year to help them win the World Series, got the final outs of that World Series against the Yankees. But he is definitely a wild card at this point. And again, I think he's probably going to sign with the team where they can say, hey, you got a spot in this rotation every 5th day. So he's still trying to work things out and try to salvage his career and be able to pitch for a very long time, maybe get one more, or not even one more, he never has gotten, but get one longer term contract. So I don't know if he's necessarily going to come to the Mets, but again, if you could get him on that type of a 1-year flyer situation, I think you could do a lot worse. Last guy, John Gray, entering his age 34 season. He missed nearly all of 2025 with a wrist fracture. He got drilled by a comebacker in spring training and was not really able to pitch throughout the rest of the season. But across 4 years in Texas with the Rangers, he pitched to a 4.28 ERA, has always had a big fastball. I think if you can get him to come in as a depth arm who could maybe swing over to the bullpen if he doesn't crack the rotation, John Gray does make a lot of sense for the Mets. And the last guy I actually did want to mention was Jordan Montgomery. He's coming off Tommy John surgery, which means he might not even be ready for the start of the season. But if you can get him to come in as just rotational depth, not a bad ad for the Mets. Overall, as we look at this market, I think that was 17 arms that we just talked about. So a lot to condense in one show. I still lean towards the trade market to get your ace. But if not, ideally, I think it's Dylan Cease that you sign. Or maybe, again, you're signing a 1-year flyer on someone like Shane Bieber or Brandon Woodruff. Or maybe even Michael King on maybe it's a 3-year deal with an opt-out, something like that. I would not tie myself long-term, so 5 years or more, to any pitcher on this market outside of Dylan Cease. I really don't think that there's another arm that I look at and say, yep, that's the guy that you give the $100+ million contract to. I'd have to dive into Zack Gallen more, and we might do another follow-up show at some point throughout this offseason where we focus more in on some of these top arms on the market, especially if we see the Mets linked to any of them. For now, though, I look at this free agent market, and I really think the Mets' best course of action is still trying to take their prospect capital, leverage that, and trade for Freddy Peralta or Sandy Alcantara in particular, guys that can come in, be your ace in the 2025 season. And then once you get into the next free agency, you go full force to try to sign Skubal. I think that's how I'm playing it if I'm David Stearns, as I am thinking about spending big next year. So what type of a stopgap ace can I have that'll get me through this upcoming season? Freddy Peralta is probably the best fit because I think you'll trade maybe 60 cents on the dollar for what it would take to get Skubal, to get Peralta, but he can be your ace for this upcoming season. and bridge that gap to Skubal. I think Sandy has immense upside, but we just saw the floor wasn't necessarily the best this past season. So I just wonder how the Mets, put that into their calculus. And then again, if you're going to go to the starting pitching market and free agency, there's a lot of uncertainty for this class. There are some arms that have plenty of upside, but there is not really the arm that you look at in this group that you just say, okay, well, they're coming off a season where they pitched like an ace all year and they're going to get paid like it. There's just not that arm. So we'll see what the Mets ultimately decide to do on tomorrow's show. Friday Farm Report. I think I want to start to take a stab at updating my top 20. I think I want to do top 20 prospects in the Mets system. So we might do the back half of that. I might do 20 to 10. We'll see. We'll see exactly. We're going to do some prospects. So whether it is a look at the top 20 prospects in the Mets system, maybe it's a look at guys who are the biggest risers in the system this past year. We'll do something prospect-centric unless any news breaks out. But I really do appreciate all of you for tuning into the show today. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button to help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now, if you're a second watch, check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. The local experts from each team, league-wide experts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.